What's going on there, YouTube, and welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, so we're going to continue our coverage over X-Men comics as we work our way up to the extension agenda. But before we are able to actually dive into that crossover, we got to cover some other books as well from other titles like Uncanny X-Men, X-Factor, New Mutants, Excalibur, and even Marvel Comics Presents. You see, when it comes to Marvel Comics Presents, it was actually an anthology series. You see, each book contained about 2 to 3 different stories about different characters in the world of Marvel Comics. It was a way for people to fall in love with different characters they may have not read about before. Now, today we're going to cover Marvel Comics Presents 48, 49, and 50 because in those 3 issues, we had a story going on called Spider-Man and Wolverine Life's End. And this is the first time you're having the characters team up after Fall of the Mutants, where Peter Parker is finding out that Wolverine is actually alive again. So let me explain. When it came to X-Men comics, there was a story arc called Fall of the Mutants. In that story arc, you had the X-Men give up their lives to stop the adversary. But when they did that, well, it was done on live television. So to the entire world, the X-Men died that day. But in reality, the X-Men were brought back to life by Lady Roma. Now, once you had the X-Men come back to life, they had decided to stick to the shadows as a way to go after their enemies, to make sure the world does not know that they were actually brought back to life. And so they were just out there in secret. But over time, you had more and more people find out that the X-Men were alive. But that number was pretty small, and Peter Parker was not on that list at all until this story arc. Now, for Peter Parker, he is going through a lot around this time in Marvel Comics. Let me explain. So, around this time, you actually had Flash Thompson begin to date Felicia Hardy, aka the Black Cat. Now, when it came to Felicia, her whole idea of dating Flash was a way to get back at Peter for marrying Mary Jane. Also around this time, the Daily Bugle was no longer under control of J. Jonah Jameson. It was bought out by a different character, Thomas Fireheart. And then on top of that, a former neighbor of Peter Parker, who was also an assistant for JJ, better known as Glory Grant, had, well, killed her werewolf boyfriend. So yeah, Peter Parker had a lot going on around this time in Marvel Comics. But for Peter, as he is swinging around New York, he does see Wolverine. Now for Peter Parker, like I said earlier, he believes that Logan is dead. And so right now he believes that it's somebody else out there trying to pretend to be Wolverine. And so he gets very upset by that. And so he goes down there and confronts Logan. Now for Wolverine, he finds this amusing. The idea that Peter Parker believes that he is dead, and he is so upset about the fact there could be someone out there pretending to be him. Now, you have Peter actually attack Logan. And so you have the two characters begin to fight against each other. But after a while, you have Logan bring out the claws to say, hey, it's me. No, I'm not dead. I'm alive. And right now, I'm trying to accomplish something. And you're in my way. Now for Wolverine, he does tell Spider-Man why he's here in New York. He says, listen, I got word that a young girl has been kidnapped, and so has her father as well. And so I was going out of my way to save them both. And also that young girl is actually a mutant, a very powerful one. Now for Peter, he believes that, you know what, after attacking Wolverine, he should help out. But here comes the next problem for Peter Parker. The warehouse that they are about to enter is the same one where Peter had to go up against the shooter that killed off his uncle all those years ago, when that shooter had ran into that apartment and Peter had to stop him. But for Peter, he has to put that to the side to help out Logan to save a young girl. Now, their main goal at first was to sneak inside the actual place to get the jump on the bad guys. Except as soon as they get inside there, well, they were caught in the act. You see, the entire warehouse was set up with some kind of defensive system. So now our heroes are trying their best to dodge all these different kinds of weapons. And honestly, having these two characters go back and forth in their conversations is pretty funny to me, because you have Wolverine kind of wondering, why is Spider-Man being so, not really goofy, but not being so serious about this entire situation? But after a few pages with our heroes trying to dodge all these different attacks, it's now time for us to meet the bad guys of today's video. And that would be the Band of Baddies. Yes, you heard that right. Their names are the Band of Baddies. Now, most of these characters are going to die at the end of this video, and you'll see how, but the Band of Baddies are being led by a character known as Critical Mass. Now, we come to find out that Spider-Man actually knows Critical Mass, and not because they fought against each other, because back in the 4th grade, they were classmates. Yep, you heard that right. They were classmates, but over time, Arnie here had gained the ability to shoot energy out of his hands and became Critical Mass and joined the Band of Baddies. And so you do have our heroes fight against these characters. Now, this fight is somewhat short-lived, and the reason why, because again, when it came to Marvel Comics Present, it was an anthology series. Each book contained about 2 to 3 stories, and so this was second chapter to Life's End in issue number 49, but it only had about 9 pages, and that was it. And so by the end of the chapter, well, you have our heroes being defeated by the Band of Baddies. Now, as we dive into the 3rd chapter, the final chapter for today's video, well, we see Wolverine and Spider-Man had basically faked the idea that they were taken down by the Band of Baddies. And so they were able to get right back up and fight against the bad guys once again. But it does lead into another problem for Peter Parker. So earlier, we saw that Peter has a lot on his plate. Well, something else comes up in the middle of the battle. One of the members of the Band of Baddies is actually his dentist. And so for Peter, he feels like he is responsible in some kind of way for his dentist becoming a bad guy and now fighting against him. Now, let's not forget that earlier we were told by Wolverine that the young girl that he is trying to save is a very powerful mutant, but we weren't told how powerful she truly was. Not until now, because we see her being able to release a huge amount of energy to the point where the entire warehouse gets blown up. Now, we're left to believe that every single person inside that building was killed off in the explosion, except for Spider-Man, who was able to get the heck out of there in time. Now, by the next page, we see that Peter went back home to Mary Jane, but he's very upset about the idea of his dentist becoming a bad guy and now being killed off in that explosion. But he's also very worried about the idea of other people that he's close to most likely becoming bad guys as well. And so he's begging Mary Jane to not fall down that path. Now for MJ, she's all like, listen, you're just stressed out. Everything is going to be okay. But for Peter, he does not believe that at all. Now, the last page kind of bothers me a tad bit, and here's the reason why. So the last page, we find out that Wolverine has survived, which honestly, we already knew he would. But so did the young girl and also her father. Now, the bad guys, they all died except the females. You know, spoiler alert, the females do come back down the road in later books in Marvel Comics. But for Logan, he tells us that the young girl could be the most powerful mutant in the world. But we never see her again in Marvel Comics. Her and her dad go on a flight and they fly away. And that's it. That's the end of the book, guys. So you're kind of like, oh, okay. but at the same time kind of wondering, how powerful is she really? And could we have explored that a tad bit more? Nope, we can't. And so this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.